YouTube, here is a divorced 205. It's going in the dolly build. May catch a glimpse of something new there, I'm not sure. There's a radiator hose on, that's new since my last update. But got a bunch of parts here. We can go through what everything is. This here is a 1350 U-joint yoke. So these, if you look closely, don't quite match up. They're like a 1310 U-joint. We're gonna go with a 1350 on the front shaft. So this one here will be going right there. And the rear shaft and the input are gonna be a 1410. So, you know, you want that old visual comparison, there you go. 1310, something like that. I didn't actually check it. 1350, 1410. Alright. So that's gonna be the front. Sorry, that's gonna be the front input and the rear shaft we're gonna be putting on it. This is another 1410 yoke, by the way. Right here, we have wonderful mounting bushings. Because these things, well, those are kind of dry rotted, so. Plus everything else is poly on this truck, so we're gonna go with some poly mounting bushings. Bottom piece, top piece, that's all there is. Works with the factory hardware as shown. You replace these Ford ordeals, which I'm not even sure why Ford does these ordeals. I'm gonna replace them with actual cotter pins. And we'll see what else is in here. It looks like there's a little baggie in the bottom. Washers, cool. We'll figure out where those go. Those don't look like the right ones. They might be those washers right there. But we'll figure it out. Either way, all that junk can go back in the box. Love Prothane bushings, love them. Awesome bushings. One thing they need to work on is their packaging, because I have no idea how they put these things in the box. But I guarantee you, when you take them out of the box, you will not be able to get them back in the same amount of room that they did. Somehow. And a bunch of seals and gaskets. So no hard parts unless we need them. But we're going to do a rebuild on this 205. Make it pretty. We have this piece broken here. I picked that one up for 50 bucks. Mirrored was my original idea, but offsetting the transfer case will allow me to get a straighter front drive shaft angle. And yeah, we're going to have to go ahead and go that route. So we're going to take the linkage bar off of that one and transfer it over to this one. Normally I would like take the whole thing and put it in a parts washer and get it cleaned up as the first step. But I'm going to be breaking it fully down. So we're going to break it fully down. And then we're going to put it in a parts washer. So I'm going to set up the camera on a nice permanent mount. Not permanent, but close enough. And start breaking this down for you. Give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, YouTube. You can see the case here. I'm going to give you some quick orientation so you know where you're at. So obviously this is the top of the case. Here's the rear output, front input, front output. Shift rails here. So all I did is move the camera to the side there. First step we're going to go through is removing any auxiliary stuff that's not needed. Your U-bolts would be one of them here. You know, when you take it out of the truck, usually U-bolts get removed. The mounts usually come out similar to this. Because it's easier to remove the bolts that go up through here than it is to actually remove these. And remove your shifter cable, in this case, because it was cut, because this is a junkyard unit. And start cleaning things up. We're going to go ahead and clean up any heavy grease on it. Light grease is not a problem, light dirt is not a problem. But we're going to get the heavier amounts off of there. So first thing we're going to do is take all these pins out here. These little cotter pin type assemblies. Not really a cotter pin, but I mean it's a similar design. These are just breaking and coming right out by hand, so that'll be nice. Alright, well that one will not come out very easily by hand, but I can go ahead and make that happen with a pair of pliers. There we go. Broke all those. And there we go. Move all those out. Now we're going to remove the nuts. These are usually on there pretty good. Need some force to get them off. That particular one didn't come off too bad. Ideally, you can see my workbench is a mess. Ideally, you should probably have about this whole workbench for this, because there's a lot of little parts inside. Not little parts, but there's a lot of parts inside. I'm just going to kind of wing that. Okay, YouTube, got some of the heavier crud off of here. So nothing really falls into the internals when I do take it apart. However, we're still doing the basic disassembly. And you have these 4 mounting nuts here that need to be removed. So we're going to take those off now. There are cotter pins, as I showed you there. That one's a little stuck in the socket. There are cotter pins, as I showed you there. The cotter pins actually were fairly well rusted and very easy to remove. So that was not much of an ordeal. These nuts were fairly tight, not too tight, but you know, enough you might want to have a helper or firm grip on the transfer case when you do it. So this one seems to be stuck a little bit. There we go. Yeah. Looks like there's a little bit of a galling in there on that. Stud itself looks fine. I might find a new nut for that one, or maybe just reuse it. It's not too bad. And that was not the intention. Light tap with a mallet or a hammer, as you can see, will jar these loose and get these bushings off and the plates off. There you can see the condition these bushings are in. Quite horrible, just like my lighting, but gets the point across. All kinds of cracks, and yeah, I want to replace those. So since we got new ones, we're going to replace those. Do have 4 washers here that do appear to be the same size as the bushing. We're going to set those aside and throw away the bushings. The bushings I know will work. The washers, not 100% sure on, so since we'll have to find that one out, we'll set the washers aside. There's 4 more bushings on the bottom side. These are square. Those obviously I know will work, so we're gonna throw those out. After that, you can remove the speedometer cable. I've already loosened the nut off camera here, the bolt. Just a little bolt and a hole that the speedo cable goes into. And this one's in there pretty good. Little wiggling and prying should be adequate to pop this out. Isn't it a captured one? Yes, it is. Okay. So you just take your screwdriver, put it in behind there, and pop it out. Standard Ford speedometer cable, but we'll give you a better look. The bolt went through that hole and through the hole in the retainer clip here, and get a little bit of pressure and a little bit of struggling, which I'll do without the camera in my hand. It'll pop right out for you. So that shows you where the speedo cable is located and how to get it out. And in my case, this is going to be trash. In your case, you may use it. I'll probably just cut it down and use it as a block off to keep stuff from going in, which in that case is actually going to go up here out of the way for now. The last thing we want to do is up front here, where the shift rails are, there's a pin with a cotter pin on the bottom. You want to get that cotter pin out. It's a very small one, so it shouldn't take much to straighten it right back out and push it through. So that's what we're going to try here. One, not put that in the pile of dirt. And the other one is covered, and I mean covered in crud. Okay, there we go. Now, we'll probably try to clean this up a little better. Alright, now I can see where the two ends are. Go ahead and try to smash them together some so we can pull it out the other side. There we go. I can rotate it over. Grab the other end. Wiggle and pull, and there we go. Got two small cotter pins. Now, take a screwdriver, well, a punch of some sort, not a screwdriver. Don't use your screwdrivers for this, but you know, they do function and work. Or a hammer. And pop these pins up. Now, getting a lot of crud in there. There's one pin out. The other one's a little tricky to get to. You could actually pull the internals apart first, but we're getting it here. Okay, now you can see the pin starting to wiggle its way up and out. So in this case, this bar is going to be thrown away because it's broken. As I said earlier, we're pulling it off of the replacement case. For my organizational method, I'm putting the pins, the cotter pins, right back in the retaining pins that they match. Actually straighten that one out just a bit. So you go right back in their matching pin until you do your cleanup. Less chance of you losing tiny little parts. Now we're down to the basic case. I'm going to actually go in here and do a little more cleanup. Cleaner you can get these in this point in time, the better it's going to be in the long run, because these are going to have a decent bit of exposure to your internal parts. If you're feeling really spunky, you can always take your ID tag off at this time. I'm not going to do that. I'll take it off a little bit later, but it's usually it's rivets or Phillips screws. If it's Phillips screws, you're lucky. If it's rivets, you know, you're a little unlucky. But that being said, both of them are used on these cases, and you can go either way. Next step is going to be to remove brain fart. The front output assembly here. So, if you haven't already, now would be a good time to drain your case. I have not, so I'm going to do that. You can see it could use a little bit of cleanup here, which we're going to get to that. But on the back side, on the bottom, there is a plug, which is typically a square head, and this one appears to be. We're going to go and clean it up just a little bit. And you can see that from the camera angle I've provided. There's a plug right here. That plug is going to be your drain. Yeah, you can see that. I'm going to probably have to do it off camera, but I am going to go ahead and pop that plug and let it drain into a catch can. And we'll pick back up after that. Alright, YouTube, I've taken some time to clean some of the heavier gunk off of here. This particular case actually has a auxiliary strut mount set up here. That's what this bracket's for. Bolts in one bolt here and two up there. So that will be coming off. Because for my case, the upper mount should be fine. I can always add a strut mount later if I needed to. So what we're going to do is we're going to start disassembling the lower portion of the case, which, as I now have it turned, would be the front output and your front rear cover there. So it's a rear cover for the front shaft. A couple things to check is for play and any weird noises. So there's just a tiny bit of play. It's 1-to-1 ratio right now, if I recall, so that shouldn't be a problem. However, you can go ahead and shift it up into the different gears. Shift it into different gears. You know, make sure it's going to go into high, low, neutral, and 2-wheel. After that, you know, you start your disassembly, or at this point, it's a good point to check that before you actually break the case. Not break it, but break it open. So, we're going to go ahead and start pulling this rear cover off. I've already drained it. Should be a 1/2 inch or 9/16. It would be 9/16. There we go. And just break your bolts loose. As you can see, this case does not balance well in any position whatsoever. So, a little bit of care should be taken not to drop this on your foot. Yeah, you want to take a little bit of care. Make sure you're not going to drop it or knock it over or anything like that. I'm going to put it back on its back and try to clean up some of these bolts that are fairly dirty right now. So I can't even get a socket on them. These cases are known to have minor leaks and be pretty dirty. You know, was 70s technology or even earlier. You know, a lot of the technology that is in these cases is actually dating back to about the 50s. So, you know, till the end of their use in what I recall was the 80s, they really didn't change much, if any. There we go, now I can get that on. And these are, the 205s are all gear driven. That's the main advantage of a 205. Gear driven case is going to have no chain slack. You cannot break a chain. You can damage a gear, but it's a lot harder to damage a gear than it is to break a chain. Similar reason why diesels usually have timing gears versus a timing chain, even though there's a lot of stuff driven off that gear train, and a chain would be a nice, simple, easy thing to do. They will actually opt for timing gears just for that extra added durability. So, you know, some people have already questioned me, is the 205 going to be strong enough? Yada, yada, yada. And the answer there is, for me, yes, it'll be strong enough. For other projects, that's to be decided. But is it going to be strong enough? For me, yes. For other people, that's to be decided. I'm going to be using this as a four-wheel drive truck. What's that mean? Well, just that. I'm going to be occasionally taking it off-road. When I do, it's not going to be anything that's hardcore. It is going to be making some good power. However, these cases will hold up to 500 horsepower, you know, 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, 800 foot-pounds of torque, whatever I'm going to be at once it's all said and done. You know, they've been put through that with minor modifications in fairly extreme setups. If I was building a dedicated mud buggy, I probably use it just because I like these cases, and I like them a lot, because they are nearly bulletproof. And bang for your buck, yeah, it makes sense. Competition racer, competition rock crawler, I would probably go towards one of the aftermarket options out there. And that's simply because the aftermarket options have a lot more strength built into them. You know, aluminum cases, they're lighter too. They're still just as strong as this heavy cast case 205 here. So, yeah, while I'm taking this off, we'll teach you a little history lesson on that. But, you know, it's a to each their own. I like them. I haven't had problems. No one who maintains their 205 has really had any problems. But if you do put it into something, maybe you know, another application you could theoretically use this for would be a four-wheel drive drag racing truck of some sort. Because it is a gear-driven case, you don't have that slack and that give. So, you know, four-wheel drive drag racing truck, that's something you could do. Now I got those all loosened and out. You can see here's your bolts. And this is the bracket. We're going to knock the bracket off. Just like that. And peel off some of the crud around it. But four-wheel drive drag racing truck, yeah, you could use this for that. Depends on your horsepower, really, as far as you know, how far you want to go, as far as it would be usable or not. But, you know, that would be a theoretical use for this. And, you know, if you're keeping it fairly moderate and you're not launching too hard, or something like using an automatic, etc., yeah, you can make a pretty good use out of this case. You know, if you're going to go ahead and do something that's going to be much more hardcore, 1,500 horsepower, four-wheel drive truck, then I probably wouldn't use one of these. I'd probably go into one of the aftermarket options. So, you know, if you're looking for the dependability and durability of an OE available case, and that's the budget, 205 is where it's at. No doubt about that, you know. For the bang for the buck, 205 is probably your best bang for the buck. We're just trying to get most of this crud out of here right now. And the reason behind that is because this cover is coming off. When this cover comes off, you really don't want crud underneath the cover. So, building up your suspense. I know. Just a few more seconds. And I'll be taking this off. Another little tip for you though is when you're cleaning your crud, feel free to use your putty knife, your wire brush, etc. I like the putty knife because you can break the kind of seal made by the crud, like I just did there, without disturbing too much of it. But take whatever you're cleaning with and clean up around you know, any of the gasket areas, because that will create a little bit of a seal in some cases. There we go, so I rotated it. Now I can get under this part, gently pry it loose. The bearing portion is kind of seated in there. You can see it roller bearing. So this case is looking kind of crappy, but I will be cleaning it up. You can see the roller bearing in there. Got a little dirt, but not much. Everything's gonna be cleaned up, so I'm not too worried about a little dirt here or a little dirt there. The big worry is lots of dirt. But if you're just replacing gaskets, you know, make sure you keep it ultra clean. I'm going to set this aside as your rear cover for the front output. You can see this part here will ride into the bearing and give you support on that rear plate. Now we're going to have to rotate this for you. And in the process, everything on my workbench is probably going to move again. Okay, YouTube, I just used the impact to take off the 3 nuts that hold the yokes on. So now we can remove the actual yokes. This is what I need to remove right now. So that is going to be trash. There's a oil slinger on here. You can see this disc, which looks like the new yoke doesn't have, so that will need to come off. But now pull out the main gear assembly for the front half of everything. And there's a huge ordeal that goes along with this, so that gear assembly's out. And get this out of the shift fork. There we go. Okay. I don't have quite enough room to get that out of the shift fork right there. Probably need to pull this front housing off too. So that's our next step anyway. So we're going to go there. And we're going to hit that with the wire brush there. Those are a little cruddy. And even the scraper in this case, because this one you can't even see. All right. Yeah, these are the exact same bolts as the cover bolts for the back of this here. So we're just going to stack them all in the same spot, because they're the same bolts. It's not going to matter if you mix those up. But that is one thing to do, is check and make sure your bolts are organized when you're tearing apart something so big. Cool thing is, like I said, this is, you know, basically designed in the 50s, and became this particular model was late 60s, 70s. But its predecessor, to 203, was around in the 50s. It's a very similar design with the 203 to 205. 205 was just a bit stronger for more of the powerful engines that were coming out during that time. All these bolts will be getting cleaned up in case we get painted, and all these other auxiliary parts here, like the seal retainers, will get painted too. So I'm going to be painting, making everything pretty and nice hopefully here, or at least cleaning it up a good bit. Alright, there's our 4 bolts. Let's see if we can just give it a nice tap to get it to come off. And that worked. So you can see seal retainer here. That's your front bearing. That is held on with the snap ring, so that will come out. However, at this time, it doesn't need to come out. We're going to finish stripping the rest of the case before that comes out. Well, since we're at it, the input yoke just slid off, so we're going to take that off. And the output yoke just slid off, so we're going to take that off. Now that we're in this time frame, I'm going to take my new yokes. I'm going to test fit them, just make sure everything's about the right location, the splines line up and they slide on, which they do. So we're good on that. New yokes will work. We know that. We're actually going to go ahead and take these 4 bolts for the seal retainer off. There we go. So we're going to take these 4 bolts for the seal retainer off. One of these days, YouTube, I will get a better camera mount. Some kind of fancy tripod thing, but I have not found one that's a decent price and still going to work very well for me. So until that day comes, I may drop the camera a few times. And these bolts again are the same as these bolts in the rear cover bolts, so you can put them all in the same pot. this bolt appears to be stuck. There we go. I'm using a 14 mil socket here, a 9/16 will give you a little more play. These are kind of dirty, and that's why they're not working as well. One thing I have noticed when you pull these out, let's see if we can get you a good view. You see a blue speck on there, dot, blue area. That's Loctite. So apparently these were Loctited from the factory, from Ford, or from New Process. You know, I assume New Process is the one who Loctites them. So that being said, when you put it back together, a little Loctite would not be a bad idea, actually. And I will be trying to remember that on my reassembly. You want to use like your blue stuff or something like that. Unfortunately, the red's going to be a little too much for these small bolts. It really just keeps them from backing out from all the vibrations from the engine and the rest of the vehicle going down the road. So red would be a little much, but blue Loctite's what you need. Go, that one came off. These appear to be very, very similar, if not the same, which it would not surprise me if they were the same. But we're still going to keep them in a front-rear orientation. Got the front and then the rear, you know, so when I put it back together, I'll remember those. Now you can see you have a bearing and a snap ring retaining bearing again on this side. So that's something else you'll have to contend with then. But for now, we're going to move over here and get this taken apart. Yeah, I went to 9/16 right there, and the fit is a decent bit better. But since it's shallow, we're going to get ourselves an extension. Alright. This is the rear output housing. These bolts are the same as the others. So all these housing bolts, seal holder bolts, etc., whatever you want to call them, are going to be the same. There we go, got past the dirt. Again, like I said, it helps to have a helper. I'm trying to get past the dirt on this particular bolt. There we go. But all these bolts are going to be the same. You can, treat them all the same, put them all in the same pile, and you're not going to mix anything up. Appears there's a decent bit of silicone on these. So again, it seems from the factory they put silicone on here on top of the gaskets. I will probably use the right stuff, which is a forma gasket. The right stuff is great. I use it for a lot of different things. You know, if it's a valve cover, I usually won't use the right stuff unless it has known leaking issues on that valve cover. But if it's something like a transfer case here that you really don't plan on breaking open again, thin coating a forma gasket on either side of the gasket will really seal that up, and it'll prevent a lot of the leaks these things are known for experiencing. Now, one thing I did notice the other night, this particular case doesn't have the breather on it. It goes right here. So I will be pulling that also off of the other case. I did pull the linkage off of the other case, my spare parts case. At least that's its use as of this time. So that way we'll have the non-broken linkage bar there. So got one more bolt. Right. Okay, YouTube. This orients like that. There's actually right here in this little notch in the case, there's a spot you can get a chisel or punch in there to go ahead and get that off. So took a bunch of hits, and then by a bunch of hits I mean a bunch of hits. But it did come off. There will be little roller bearings in here, which will fall everywhere. Yeah, you want to be careful not to lose any. Usually a baggie of some sort. In this case, I will be using this one. It is your best bet for those. So you take those and put them in the baggie. In my case, they're going to get a little dirty. But when I put it back together, I will clean them up. So, something to remember. Your little roller bearings are going to get dirty. You clean them up. And try not to lose any. Because if you're short one, you're replacing the bearing. Go. Okay, we got them all out of there. This assembly can be set aside for now. Now I am a little dirty, so I am cleaning up my hands. In the hammering process, the rear bearing, the front bearing, input bearing, happened to come out. So, you know, they're not held in there too tight. The snap rings just to keep it from walking back into the case. And you really don't need to have that out to take the shaft out though. But, you know, it does sometimes make it a little easier. And this is being a pain in my butt. There we go. Sometimes it does take a little gentle persuasion from a mallet. If you use a mallet, always use something non-mooring, so that way you're not causing any damage. Okay, YouTube, I did get the input and output shaft assemblies out here. Did come apart in 2 pieces, took some wiggling and jiggling. There was a water in this case at one point. There was a little bit of rust. Nothing seems to be damaged though. So yeah, we did get those out. You got to pull out this gear also. Which is going to go over there. All the damage from rust, we'll show you quick actually. Really seems to be right here on that surface. That is not a crucial surface. Bearings right on here, that's clean. So I'm just going to clean that up. We're going to put this back over here, out of the way. So now we have almost a bare case. You need to pull these 3 bolts here. They're going to pull out the cover for the idler gear. Yeah, a little bit smaller than the 9/16 that everything else has been. So since these are a different size bolt, we're going to set those aside in their own section. Then you pull off this cover, which in my case is going to take a little bit of cleaning. There we go. And there is the idler shaft. That cover can go aside also. Now the idler shaft, the other side, I can get it the whole way around. There we go. Has a nut on it. You want to loosen that nut with the impact. I'm going to leave it threaded on just a little bit to knock things loose. Okay, YouTube, we got a bigger hammer and a punch here. Okay, so this little beefier punch is working here. But we're going to get it here. Give it a couple more taps. There you go. So there's your idler shaft. That'll come out and set aside. Now we need to pull the shift forks. This is going to need a little bit of cleaning. Once I get this cleaned up, I'll pick up the camera quick and show you what's what. Okay, YouTube, same orientation here. Here's one of your plugs. There's your other plug. Your bolts there. 1, 2, and then here and here are your little plugs. So now you know what I'm working with. We're going to take these these bolts out here first. Gotta find the socket. We'll see how this works. This is a thick wall impact socket, and I'm not sure how well it's going to work, so we're going to find that out. There we go, that one loosened up. So did that one. Okay, that was a 19 millimeter, so 19 or 3/4. Would work for these. Let's take them out. There's a little spring and a little ball under each one. So you can see a little spring on the end here, and the ball's still in there. The ball will fall out if you flip it upside down. So that's option 1, and option 2 is a nice little magnet. But now at this point, you want to make sure your shift rails are nice and loose and freed up and moving, which is still a little stiff, but they are. Those balls are detents that lock the shift rail in there. So next thing we're going to do is get ourselves a nice little punch to go into these little 1/4 inch plugs. A little smaller is good. Grab your hammer, tap them through into the case. Okay, once those are through, you could fish them out, which I guess I'll do. I see one here, and the other one is right here. Okay. Might have a little gear oil on the bottom of the case still, but you know, not too big of a deal. So after we take those plugs out, we now have access to our shift rail pins. I'm just trying to line up here and get everything set. So, okay, YouTube, you can see the punches down in the hole. If you look in the hole, you'll see as you slide the shafts in and out and rotate them slightly, there is a roll pin on there. You got to line up that roll pin so it lines up with the hole, so you can go ahead and punch it out. I've already done that because I needed a light for that, and I just, you know, needed to do all that. But I do have them tapped out enough to keep this in and make it easy for camera's sake. So it would take a little bit longer for you, but just tap out the pin. And I may need a longer. Nope. There we go. Fortunately, now my punch is stuck. There we go. And the other side. There we go. They should both be coming out. Okay, so you see the shift fork will spin independent of the shift rail. That is the point you want to get to. The pins would go the whole way out if you had a long enough punch. I don't, so in that case, work them loose and gently, maybe with help of another punch here. This is a screwdriver, YouTube, not a punch. Don't use it as a punch. Knock out your shift rails. The shift fork will fall. So there's your shift rail. There's a long and a short. They go back in a specific order. So that being said, something to keep in mind. Here's your other shift rail and your other shift fork. Shift forks are the same, shift rails are not. Basic idiot-proof design here. If it looks the same, it's the same. If it don't look the same, it's not the same. There's no very subtle differences where bolt pattern's off by 3 millimeters or so that you put the two parts side by side, you're not going to see. This is your shift rail here. I'm not going to show you how to do this, but you can do your own research and find out if you're doing the, wow, brain fart. If you're doing the twin stick conversion, you do a little bit of grinding on these notches here on either or both the shift rails, and you can go ahead and get a twin stick conversion, which will allow it to do, you know, a front four-wheel drive low, for example, there. But anyway, the only thing we have left to take this case fully apart is to take out the internal guts for the idler shaft assembly. You simply reach in, carefully grab, and I think they go out the other side technically. Nope, you can do this side. Grab them and pull them out. There's a needle bearing on either side with some shims. So you want to be careful to keep that all in order. I don't see the shims offhand. That is a shim, but I know that was in there before. Okay. So this one was only shimmed on one side, apparently. So I'm rooting through this nasty goop and not seeing anything. Okay. Yeah, so that one was only shimmed on one side. So we're good to go with that. This here piece actually came off of the front assembly, and it fell down when I took the front assembly out, so that's going to go back over with the front assembly for now. I'm going to get this case cleaned up, paint it a bit maybe, and go from there. So when we come back, we'll have a nice clean case. We'll have some clean parts, and we'll be putting it back together. I'm not sure if that's going to be a second video or not. I'm probably going to combine it all into one, depending on the length of this one. So, that being said, putting it all back together is pretty much reverse of disassembly. But like I said, we will cover that. There are a couple little things you have to be wary of. And I do have the whole gasket and seal kit along with the new yokes ready to go.